We wanted to do a panel slightly different this year. Every year at Summer Sessions, we do a panel that focuses on dance radio, and we really just talk about that. And I think as the music industry has changed, the way music is viewed, promoted, and seen is very different today. So we wanted to put some of the leaders of the industry out there that are helping to break music today in not just a radio sense, but on a video sense. So we've put together a great list of panelists. I would like to start from my right, your left, and ask each person to introduce themselves.
My name is. Your mic's not on. My name is Blake.
And
Put the mic on.
I run a curation outlet called Proximity and a record label under Universal Music.
My name's Andre. I run Trap Nation. It's like a YouTube curation channel.
Justin Prager. Some people might know me as Just in Time. Director of Programming, Editorial, and Curation for Vivo.
Geronimo, oversee electronic dance music programming at SiriusXM. Checks in the mail.
Connor Sestrom. I run press for the record label Monstercat.
I'm Mike Poppadines. I'm from Music Choice, and I'm a PD.
And if you want to know what's going on in Mike's life, just get added to his playlist that comes out every Monday.
It's
and
like
you'll
a journal
know how his
entry,
weekend
like every
went.
Monday morning.
And I am Kerry Vance from Promo Only Promotions. Thank you very much for coming out to Summer Sessions this afternoon. So what I wanted to do is I'm going to throw this out to Geronimo and Mike first, and then more so of the guys that have video channels and YouTube channels. We can talk about the traditional way that music gets promoted from a record label standpoint has been send out the music, call a program director, ask them about a record. Hey, what do you think? I'd really like for you guys to support the music. And I think you guys are open to doing that kind of stuff. For the newbies in the room, is there a way that people should present music to you and try to promote you on music?
You want to take this one first?
Sure. That's a good question. There's definitely several ways to get music to me or to people that I work with. One guy that's here in the house, Ben Harvey, who programs Chill, which has really become a force unto itself. And Dre Nieto, who's not here but programs Electric Area and works closely with me on BPM. Email links. I would try to be as brief as possible. The longer the email, the more chance I would say, I don't want to speak for everybody on this panel, but more chance for us to just tune out and go to the next one. And then on email on your phone, it just looks 50 times longer. So if you have like 5 sentences, it looks really long on the iPhone. So if you have a short attention span, like most people in the music biz, that's probably not the greatest thing. But really, links. In the previous panel, a lot of people mentioned, Dropbox and SoundCloud links. I mean, music to get into the hands of programmers is really, really simple these days. I mean, you just send a workable link and we click on it, whether it's from our phone or desktop at work. That's how I listen most of the time.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think a lot of guys here can attest to this, but if you're handling programming, you're not just doing programming, you're wearing a lot of different hats, and a lot of that is what goes down at Music Choice too. So definitely getting messages in digestible bits, right? So nothing crazy long, no long stories that are just page after page, but just kind of simple, straight to the point kind of things. Metrics are super important, but also getting the music itself. So SoundCloud, Dropbox, things like that. And another thing is kind of respecting the call times, which can be tough, but calls are great. Emails, I think, are even better. And I know from Geronimo, you two, we'll always do our best to get back to everybody. But, you know, when you present us with the information that we need, especially like metrics and, you know, little tidbits, did you get a sync? Is this in, you know, a great commercial or some movie or something that kind of pushes it over the edge? That's when our eyes kind of pop up and the light bulb goes off, and that's when we're like, that's the song to check out. So things like that, I think, are definitely crucial.
Now, for Blake and Andre, you guys have YouTube channels out there that are just massive, right? Blake, you're at 7 or 8 million subscribers to your channel, or is it going
A
up?
little under, but yeah.
It's a little
Around
under.
there, around there.
What are you at now?
Yeah. 5 million.
5 million. I gave you a boost. After this convention, that's what it'll go to. And I know, Andre, between Trap Nation with 15 million and the Nations with 25 million, you guys just have incredible viewership, listenership on the web. Do you field phone calls from labels? Is there a way that artists, managers, people can reach out to you about music, or do you find it on your own?
For me personally, I find about maybe 10% of it on my own now. Just because my sound is more mainstream and I upload basically everything that Warner, Sony, and Ultra release. So they'll send me music months in advance and it's all pretty much scheduled out by now. But in terms of other artists approaching me, I guess Geronimo brought up some good points as well. Some good do's, but some don'ts are don't CC like 60 people in the same email, and then make sure that you address the right person in the email. Because if you're addressing Andre to me, I don't want to listen. I don't want to read your email anymore. So I think just like being
Does that
forward-
happen a lot?
Yeah. Because there's so many of us, they just get confused. But yeah.
Andre?
I'm a little different because I started the channel by finding music on SoundCloud. I didn't take submissions for a long time, and that's how I found most of my popular uploads. And eventually, like, years came, and I eventually started getting music submitted to me, and I accepted a lot of it. And then I realized I wasn't finding, like, the classic songs that are getting 150 or 200 million views on the channel anymore. So now I'm basically just taking submissions via email and, like, via Messenger on Facebook, which is pretty weird because most people don't do that anymore. But it works. I don't know. I don't take phone calls. I don't know why anyone would do that to me, but it works.
Now, Justin, at Vivo, because you came from Music Choice, and then you're at Vivo. In a traditional sense, do labels work you on music? How do you decide what content?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, they definitely work us on, you know, obviously the major labels and a lot of the big indies. You know, they're always working us on videos. I mean, obviously it's a little different than radio because you're more limited with video, obviously, than you are with audio tracks. Although nowadays it's becoming more and more popular to actually make what we call pseudo videos, which is essentially the audio track with maybe like the album cover on it. So we're getting actually a lot more submissions now from major labels, indies, unsigned and everything, just regular tracks. And from that, we actually started a playlist called Fresh Music Friday, which is essentially kind of our version of New Music Friday, like, you know, Spotify, a couple of the other guys do. So we're finding that a lot more people now are coming to us to listen to music just as well as watch music. So, you know, that's definitely been a big thing. Lyric videos, obviously, as well. But as far as submissions go, yeah, I was going to say that besides, you know, a lot of the promoters coming to us and wanting us to play this and that and promote it, anybody can actually get their video onto Vivo. It's just really that next level of us kind of getting behind it and promoting it. But I can honestly tell you that myself and my team, we watch pretty much every single video that is uploaded to Vivo. So it's almost like if you're a smaller artist, it's almost best to first upload it to Vivo through one of our distributors. You can't just send us the link itself. I can explain that to you after this. But that's one of the best ways actually for us to notice you if you're a smaller artist, is really just to get it onto Vivo, and then we kind of look from there. You know, we know the bigger names and all that, but we definitely look at everything that comes in, we pretty much look at.
Now, Connor, one of the things we've heard from the panelists here is, in an email, a short blurb, keep concise. You do PR for Monstercat, and my guess would be that many of the press releases that you send out probably aren't going to be short and concise. So now you're a promotion guy as well. Like, for people in this audience, maybe explain like how to go about doing some PR stuff, and then how you utilize that to help you at radio.
I think the biggest thing is just understanding, like what you guys are saying about personal preferences. You're not going to know. I don't know what you had for breakfast this morning, but like I know what your preferences are because I know how Music Choice as a fan base functions, right? Like if I sent you a full press release telling you about how, let's say, like Conroe learned how to make music, that's not really relevant to your music distribution, like, and you guys like programming tracks. But like if I'm pitching it to, let's say, DJ Mag, those things are prevalent. So I think the biggest thing is knowing what capacity, what platform you're pitching to can do for you, and that kind of then translates to what you're doing as far as how lengthy you're going with your emails, what kind of context you have for that. And then, yeah, I think, really just understanding the platform and really understanding the person is what's key.
Now, Geronimo, you run a YouTube EDM Top 15 show. That's metrics pulled from YouTube, which I would think that what Blake and Andre do probably affects immensely what you do. Do you communicate with each other? Do you guys share any information, or can you tell when you're looking at data that's coming through if it's coming off of their channels?
The most I can tell from the data, and it's actually the data that we get is provided to us by YouTube, part of our partnership. We can see who really runs a good, tight ship with who knows how to work their channels the best. And obviously, these guys are their stuff shows up all the time. Armada, Spinnin', Ultra are labels with unbelievable presentations and unbelievable presence on social media, and in particular with videos. And we see that weekly. Sometimes, multiple songs. We only have 15 spaces on the YouTube EDM 15, and sometimes there's like 4 Trap Nation tracks, or some 6 Ultra tracks, or it's pretty amazing how focused and how strong some of those YouTube channels are.
Now, we've noticed a lot in the last year or so, music that really comes off of viral videos, right? Kids find music, they pick a song, they put it in the background, it gets 1 million views, 2 million views, 3 million views. I think one of the labels that understands the use of music in these YouTube videos is Monstercat, right? You give people, creators, and the ability to utilize your music royalty-free without having to pay. Can you possibly talk a little bit about it, or if something has broken from you guys granting licenses to some of these creators to use music?
I think the powerful thing with YouTube is these kind of sub-communities that happen, like with Monstercat, with Proximity, with Trap Nation, and so from I guess you could say permutation between those channels, it's really being able to understand those different communities. So I wouldn't pitch like Blake on a dubstep track, because I'm not going to do some hardcore Delta heavy, but what's going to fit with your demographic versus what's doing well in the kind of confines of Monstercat is definitely interesting with the licensing part of things.
Now with Andre, have a record label. Blake, you manage artists. What's the fine line to tread? Because now you're listening to music and you're like, hey, I like that, I want to play it on my channel, but sometimes the shoe's on the other foot now, right? You've got an artist, Justin Caruso, right? You want to get played on radio, you've probably got to call some of these guys or have someone like myself go, Carrie, can you help me get this record played? Same thing with you, Andre. You have a label now, and you want labels, you want these outlets to support your music, right? You want BPM to play your record, you want Music Choice to play your record, or Vivo, to support the video. How different is it for you guys when you have to think like a label or a manager now versus the person who's choosing the music to be on a channel?
I think since we've been running channels for 5 years and working with labels, we kind of learned a lot about how they run and basically pick off of that and see how we can improve on our own. So for me, similar to Monstercat, we'll let everybody use our music because we want the music to speak for itself. And let's say it goes into one video that gets 100 plays, but that creates a chain reaction of people watching the video or the song, then it's invaluable, the amount of exposure that can give us versus a penny ad. So I think just kind of learning off of what the labels have done over the past 6 years and improving on that, with our channel, with management, with everybody that we work with, because we work with artist managers, labels, press, PR, or PR is press, but just kind of learning and picking the right role at the right time, whether that's the label hat, the artist hat, manager hat, yeah.
How about you, Andre?
I don't know. So when I choose a song for Trap Nation, it's knowing what 15 million people on my channel, specifically my channel, not other people's channel or Spotify or iTunes or any of that stuff will like. It's just specifically the 15 million people. And then when I'm choosing a track for the label, it's more figuring out, okay, what audience do I want to attract for that song? Do I want to make it a Spotify track? Do I want to make it a YouTube track? Do I want to make it perform really well on SoundCloud, where it's kind of like an underground-based song, where maybe it's not very listenable to radio listeners or mainstream audience, but it's really listenable to anyone under the age of 18 or something like that, really likes experimental music. It's totally different. Like when I choose a song for Trap Nation, I'm in a totally different mindset. And then when I'm choosing a song for my label, it's way different, I'd say.
Now, Justin, you mentioned anybody can have a song up on Vevo, but you guys get behind certain songs that can really take them to the next level. Is there a sign? What are you looking for when deciding this song has the legs to grow or get to that next level?
I mean, really, essentially, just good music, you know, and obviously good visuals. You could have a bad song, but it could have good visuals, which can, you know, sometimes kind of twist you, but it doesn't make it a good song. Yeah, I mean, I think as far as I'm sorry, can you repeat the second part?
How does a song go from, let's say, point A to point Z?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, we're really behind independent artists now, whether they're on a smaller indie or an unsigned, you know, artist. We have a program called Discover, which a lot of artists have actually kind of blossomed from. Including like a Georgia Smith, who is signed to, you know, who's signed now to one of the major labels. I'm trying to remember which one. But, you know, we definitely look for, you know, like I said, like really quality music, really quality visuals, and that's really first and foremost. I mean, obviously the bigger names, you know, they're going to get promotion. You know, that's the easy part of our job. It's really finding, discovering, and really getting those artists out there that are just kind of brand new, off the radar. Nobody knows them yet. And, you know, that's kind of who we look for. You know, that's definitely a big focus right now for Vevo.
Now, Geronimo, when I first met you, you were at B91 in Brooklyn. Like he chuckles, but John Parker was your PD, right?
Yeah, that was 100 years ago, by the way.
It was about 100 years ago, because I was at a competing college radio station. You guys were kicking my butt. So, but I think it's a little different. Like, you could get your start years ago, kind of coming out of college radio, and then growing the ranks, going to Alabama or going to Tennessee or going to New Orleans or the various different places that you've been. For people trying to get into radio, how do you see like a way in today if somebody wanted?
Don't do it. Just kidding. It's a really crazy business. If I had to do it again, I don't know if I would want to do it again. Personally, I paid my dues. As you mentioned, I grew up in Brooklyn, and I managed to get different radio jobs around the country: New Orleans, Mobile, Alabama, Savannah, Georgia. But that was the way to do it. Now, and by the way, I worked really, really hard on getting rid of the Brooklyn accent. And then when I moved back, it was like, oh, you need to sound more Brooklyn. So, you know, things change. Now things move a lot faster. You can have your own radio station in your house. You can, you know, people are doing podcasts and becoming super famous that way. So you really don't even have to break into traditional radio like you used to. And I do know, like, radio puts a lot of people on the air locally that start, you know, right there, that whether they're interns or there's a lot of people that work at SiriusXM that are on the air, that some of them are right out of college. They get jobs as coordinators. They work on music channels. And eventually they wind up on the air. That's not a typical story, but it has happened. So yeah, the game has changed a lot. It's in some ways it's easier, some ways it's more difficult, but there's way more opportunities for people, I think, now, you know, with the internet and being able to do podcasts and get it out to massive audiences globally.
Well, I think when you look at new ways of creating stations, or outlets where music can be heard or videos can be heard. I think you look at what Andre and Blake have done. Like, Andre, is it 5 years ago that you kind of started Trap Nation?
5 years ago, yeah.
Right, so did you ever think, and Blake, I'm going to ask you a similar question, that when you were sitting in your bedroom at home, 4.5, 5 years ago, that 5 years later you would have, channels that 15 million, 25 million people are listening to, and how did you grow the channel or grow your channels?
I had no clue, obviously. I was 15 in high school when I started it, so it was just kind of like a way to not do my homework or like have a better excuse not to do my homework. It was honestly like the first year of doing it, it was more just like making mistakes, and not like bad mistakes, it was just like making mistakes like, oh, this logo doesn't look right, or this background isn't good for this song, or the mood of this song doesn't fit my channel's name, like random stuff like that. And throughout the first year, the channel didn't really grow. And then I was like, okay, maybe it's time to start kind of kick up the pace a little bit and realize, what I'm doing and kind of fix it. So I looked at other channels that were, I wouldn't say competing against me, but the same genre, or uploading the same genre, and I was like, okay, they're doing this, or they're doing this wrong, or they're not doing this. I'm gonna do the complete opposite and see if it works. So for example, my motto, or my kind of strategy when I was a young channel was, I would go look at other channels and say, okay, this channel is not engaging with the community, or this channel hasn't promoted this artist yet, and I think this artist is really cool, or I think it's really important to engage with community to get them to retain on your audience. Stuff like that. And I started communicating with the community, and I was like, okay, if people are replying back to my comments on my video, I'm gonna reply back to them and create conversations with each and every fan. And at that time, I only had about 1 year, maybe 9,000 subscribers, and maybe 100 people would comment a day, or 50 people would comment a day on a video, so it wasn't that hard to keep up with engaging with people and making them feel like they're important to the channel. Now it's a little bit harder because there's more than 9,000 people, but that was my strategy to begin with, and I think that's one of the reasons why the channel is like where it is right now. There's other reasons, but that's the most important one that I think.
Blake?
My story is a little bit different. I was in my 3rd year of pre-med, and I was planning on becoming a dentist, and that obviously didn't happen. But it just kind of like got to that point where I was like, I can either be a dentist or I can kind of share music and do what I do now, and I kind of chose the music part, even though my parents weren't too excited about that. But basically just I think between Andre and I was just keeping the integrity and doing what we've been doing for so long and never selling out. And I mean, it's just sharing good music. We've been doing the same thing for 6 years, just kind of expanding into a label or doing events. It's always the same thing, and I think it always will be. And that's why we've been able to upload videos to YouTube, thousands of videos for 6 years, and it's still fun. And we love doing it and reading comments and seeing what people think and just thinking what the next step is and how we can grow bigger and keep doing this for the rest of our lives. So I think for me, it's just seeing how I can keep moving forward with my genre.
Can I give you an example of how laser-focused Blake is on his audience? So we're playing this song on BPM. It's kind of unknown, but it's doing very well for us by an artist named Monomind. It's kind of a secret project from David Guetta. And I hit him up and I gave him the full story, and he was like, sorry. I told him that they wanted to find a place to debut the video. And he was more like, thanks, but no thanks. But I've got to give you all the credit in the world because, being honest like that, I really respect that. And it just shows me even more so that you're so laser focused on who your audience is, and you don't want to stray from that. And I think that's, very commendable. I think it was really awesome.
Thank you.
Now, Mike, I think one of the things I love when I talk to you, aside from, as I mentioned, you really should get his weekly emails because they're incredible to find out. Like, I think, you saw the Violent Femmes this past week? Is that what was in there? I didn't see the one today. I didn't check emails.
I didn't send it out yet, but it's coming.
So what I love about you is your passion. Like, you love to go out and see shows, whether it's bands from the 80s or from today, or, you programmed indie rock for Music Choice, right? So your music tastes are very diverse. How do you, when we talked about, like Geronimo just mentioned, Blake is very focused, your taste in music is so varied. How do you reel it in when it comes time to make music decisions for a channel like, Dance EDM?
Right. So you kind of have to separate things. You have to departmentalize, your passion or what's right for your channel, your station. What's always been great for me is I've always known that I've always wanted to be in music, and that I need to stay laser focused on not only just what I want and what my gut tells me, but kind of what our audience is dying to hear. So, things like metrics, things like studies that we do. Music Choice is a little bit of a different monster than a lot of other different stations because, we're mainly cable and trying to meet the challenges of the day, going after, the digital space and things like that. So what you really have to do is, and it's almost kind of like you have split personalities, right? So, the dance world is obviously extremely different than the indie rock world. I don't think I need to elaborate much more, but there are some things that cross over. And when they do, that makes programming extremely fun and extremely entertaining. What you definitely have to do is, for me and for anybody I think who programs, is you kind of have to trust the people you work with. You have to trust your colleagues. You have to trust the promo people. Granted, everyone has an agenda, but you can really get to know somebody just by having a one-on-one conversation, a very honest conversation about, the music that's being presented to you, or, the kind of projects that are on the table. And then what you have to do is you have to sit with it for a little while. Sometimes you can't pull the trigger on the hottest thing that everyone says is going to be, the next big thing in the world. Sometimes you really just have to, let it settle and see what happens. There have been so many times where I've been wrong about a track, where I've said, this is sent from heaven. This is the best thing of all time, and then it falls flat. Or there have been other times where, I'm probably not going to go with it, and then it's number one across the board. So, I still make mistakes, but the thing is, realizing them, and then just kind of going back to the drawing board and realizing what works. And data is great, and getting everything the way you need it to, and emails is fine, but you got to kind of balance everything with your gut, and then what's right for your channel. So that's what I think.
Connor, one of the things that we try to do as promotion people, as labels, is maximize the visibility for our artists, right? So you have Conroe on your label, you have Pegboard Nerds on your label, right? So you have a lot of up-and-coming artists. You have artists that are having some success. But one of the most successful records that Monstercat had was Marshmello's Alone. Can you maybe take this audience behind how that record got so massive, if it was with the help of these channels or these channels? Tell the story, because I think for the indie labels that are in this room, and the majors as well, they would all love to be able to have a Monstercat, the success of Monstercat, that Marshmello's Alone had.
Yeah. I think it's a mixture of things. The first thing I think about is the panel this morning when talking about not fighting a hit record. We didn't necessarily have the plan of immediately going to, let's say, pop top 40 radio with it. It kind of happened in its own right between, the really intensely loyal fan base that we have, but also, awesome channels like these guys over there. But I think, also a big shout out to, Mo and what Red Light's been able to do as far as branding with a guy like Marshmello. But it very much is like a multitude of things. And I think the most important thing about it is understanding that, these things can kind of come organically, and you can't force a hit record. You can put everything in the perfect place for it, and hopefully it's going to happen. But, you're sometimes going to have an Alone track that, is going to start getting the momentum, and you hit strike the iron when the iron's hot, so to speak. So I think that's the biggest thing about it. Yeah.
Justin, what catches your attention? Right, there are so many different ways today. It used to be you'd play a song, did the audience call and request it, or you did traditional research or call out research, and people say, I love it, I want to hear it more. Mm-hmm. What are some of the things that you're looking for when you said you support a lot of indie artists? What catches your attention?
Obviously research is a big, part of it as far as the data that comes in, the views and things like that. But you don't want to let data dictate what you play. You know what I mean? It's a nice guideline. Oh, it's getting, this many views or whatever, but it doesn't mean it's good. That person might be just viewing it 30,000 times or something like that himself or herself, and we don't even know about it. But as far as, really what captures it, I kind of have to just go back to, it's kind of like gut feeling, wow, this is a good song. Wow, these are good visuals, and kind of go from there. But, research will always play a part in everything. But, you know, as a programmer, I think all these guys feel the same way. It's really kind of gut instinct first. You're not going to be right every time, like Mike said, but I think you know a song is good. It doesn't matter if it becomes a #1 smash or not or whatever. You know what's good and maybe what's not. You got to keep your personal taste out of it, obviously, a lot as well. But, you know, that's what we're here for. So it's really just kind of like gut feeling first, but, you know, research and everything else is a big part of it.
And I think just like adding on to that, like marketing can only do so much for a record. The record actually has to be good. So I think if there's any like positivity in that, it's that if you have a good record, it will speak for itself and it will get those plays. Like Andre and I know for sure like have uploaded songs from random artists compared to side-by-side uploads with Chainsmokers, Martin Garrix, and they've done infinitely better because the music was that much better and people wanted to share it. So I think just adding on to that point, like marketing can only take a record so far, and then the song actually has to be like really, really damn good.
Look, a lot of times in the music industry, there's friendly rivalries, right? One label wants to have the #1 record over another label. One station wants to have the bigger ratings over another station. You guys seem to communicate a lot with each other. You and Andre and Geronimo, you seem to communicate with these guys. What?
I saw these guys fighting backstage, so don't.
No, but tell me a little bit about, is there a friendly rivalry, or is it just a friendship? Because, again, I think a lot of times when we look at, there's always been competition among stations, and I think a lot of big label owners or corporate people will frown upon, you shouldn't talk to him, he's the enemy kind of thing. But it seems like you guys really communicate with each other. Am I wrong on that?
Yeah, no, we're actually all friends, from Mr. Suseshi to Monster Cat to me and Andre. I mean, me and Andre travel the world together. We were in Japan for like 3 weeks.
That's
just
true.
like working out of Japan.
Climb Mount Fuji?
No.
No Wi-Fi
Try,
up there.
Yeah. but we are all friends and we all work together. He gives me tips, like stuff I've never realized that I could do on YouTube. And we co-release together as well, and we hang out in LA, but now I moved to New York. But yeah, I mean we're all friends. I don't see any rivalry because our audiences are so different. Like I do mainstream music, he does trap. Monster Cat does like gaming, like awesome. You know what I mean?
You bring up a good point with gaming. Tell me, you know, Kana, how Monster Cat utilizes, or maybe how record labels out here can utilize the gaming industry to get your music visible.
I think it's a really undertapped world as far as like the crossover that is between, you know, dance music and gaming. You know, they're obviously the trajectories are pretty much in line with each other, but also the communities. I mean, we put our weekly podcast on Twitch, and the community there is certainly behaves and is a different demographic than what we do when we upload the podcast to YouTube or, you know, to SoundCloud. And, you know, there's certainly like a lot of different opportunities you can have, whether it be, you know, syncs or, you know, whether it's scoring something like Noisa. I think they did like the Dota, they scored the last Dota game. But like, there's all these different opportunities in that world. We just had an album on Rocket League, so if you're playing Rocket League, the first playlist that comes up is Monster Cat. So there's all these different ways you can do it, and the way that we've been able to maximize our kind of like gaming friendly fans and our music friendly fans and have those like intercross with each other has really been able to make the most of both those industries really still on the rise and being so powerful.
One of the things that's come up, not in the last year, but again, the traditional way of promoting records is calling somebody and saying it's selling, it's requesting. But I'm sure Mike, Geronimo, and maybe to some extent, you know, Justin, Andre, and Blake, people go, hey, it's got 50 million Spotify streams, it's got 100 million Spotify streams, it's got, you know, 100,000, 500,000 YouTube views. I mean, Geronimo, how much of that data do you take in when you sit down and you're meeting with Ben and Andres and sit down and go over music? How much of that are you looking at?
All of it, as much as we can find out. Much like Justin said, it's a tool, but it's not the Bible, you know, by any stretch of the imagination. It's important. It's really great. Like, you know, Shazam is super, super important. We have our own internal research, which always is important, but we take it with a grain of salt. You know, if we do know that, like, and you and I have talked about this, whenever we get something that's a remake, I always wonder if the people in our research survey are grading the song or judging the song on the song itself based on its history or the actual new version. Because a lot of times I'll see something that's brand new, although it's a remake of a familiar song, and the research is terrible and it shows like massive burn and hate scores, and so we do that with a grain of salt. But getting back to what you asked, as much data as possible. We use BuzzAngle, which has been a great tool where we can dig in a little bit deeper and see sales and streams, and the sales information on there goes so deep that you can actually see like how many songs have been purchased at Cracker Barrel. Like, I mean, it's that in depth.
Are there a lot of songs on BPM getting played at bought at
Pretty
Cracker
much
Barrel?
all of them, right? But as much data as possible. I'm a freak with that stuff. I love reading it and just learning and finding out new information all the time.
Andre, you were mentioning, you and I were talking prior to this, and how much data do you get from your listeners? You able to see tune-outs and see if you're playing a song, and if people are dropping out, maybe you shouldn't play that song? How much do you look at data?
I get everything from playlist exit rates to likes, dislikes, demographics from any country in the world, any city in the United States. I don't get cities outside of the United States. Obviously, I can't see stores and stuff like that, but I can see ages, demographics. I can see basically anything that most other platforms can see, which is great. But other than that, no.
Do you look at your research?
Yes, I also use a app called Hive, back when people used to download music, and the data that you could extract from that is actually really scary, from phone numbers to your physical address. Although we wouldn't really use it, but it's crazy how much data you can see from people and how much it helps a business, like having this data. But yeah, I look at everything, as he said.
Justin, in your day-to-day, I don't know if it's rarer these days, but how much of your gut do you use versus research?
It's pretty equal, and maybe even a little more gut, to be honest with you. Like I said, I mean, a song or a video can have all these like crazy numbers or whatever, but it really just comes down to, what is going to be best. What is going to be best on what platform and what playlist and everything. We definitely take it into account. Don't get me wrong, that like research and, we have a lot of internal systems that really kind of drill down and do demos and things like that, which is really great. But, a lot of it, and, I've been doing it for a while, is definitely gut.
We've got about 5 minutes. I'm going to ask one more question to two panelists, and we'll do about 5 minutes of questions, and then we're going to have the Mobile to the Masses panel coming up next, which is an interesting twist. It's programmers and music directors that started out as mobile DJs and now program music for radio stations. So I think you guys will enjoy that. For Mike and Geronimo, because I think you guys more so than everybody else on the panel, what role do mix shows play at your stations, and how much music is coming from your mix shows?
Right, so I get weekly submissions for mix shows, and we put them in pretty high placement on weekend nights. So what I do is I have a pretty good relationship with a lot of the guys who submit, and then we get some guest mixes, which are always pretty fun. But I like to be in contact with those guys because they're hearing some underground stuff that I might not be hearing. And so from there, it's just kind of picking their brains, being like, well, where did you hear this? What are you hearing from other people about it? And, there's a good partnership there. So mix shows are great. It's a lot of, creativity in there for the different mixes that go in, and, all the different sounds they're playing with. So I like to give a lot of my mix show guys free reign, obviously within the law and the limits. But they're just an incredible crop of people, and what you got to do is you got to trust that they have kind of the right idea in mind, and that they're really kind of pushing the boundaries of what a dance channel can be. But that can go for anything, a pop channel, an urban channel, things like that. So it's super important for discovery, I think, is the best part.
We have a really good Saturday night lineup with we've got Danny Howard from BBC, and then Blau Martin Garrix, Vice. I trust those guys incredibly, and they pretty much have free reign for what they do. But the DJs is where it all starts. There really would be no dance music without, or at least on the radio, or at least available commercially, without the DJs. I can't even explain and put into words how much I respect what they do and how important they are to what we do. I've been to basically every North American electronic festival over the last 10 years, and I learned something new at every festival I go to, whether it's EDC Las Vegas or Electric Zoo New York or Ultra. I'm schooled every time, and I learn something new, and I hear something new, and it's my homework. It's where I learn. And but with all that being said, I know Flipside said it in one of the other panels that it's always all about the hit record. It's always all about the hit music, and I'm just constantly listening to our mix shows. I check out Brian Fink and his shows, and I get angry when I hear them playing stuff that we don't have yet. But and it still is very competitive. But for the most part, it's all coming from the DJs, all coming from the mix shows first.
Yeah, look, I know, like, Bass Jackers and Lucas and Steve on Spinnin', that was one of the records you were like, hey, Martin Garrix played this last night. It's a great record. I'm going to go on it. So it's great to see that occur. So we've got a couple of minutes. Any questions from anybody in the audience? And is there a microphone out there? Any questions? We've got some questions over here.
I feel like Jerry Springer, my God. Who said that? Who said that?
We're going to do 2 questions from the audience.
So this is specifically for Trap Nation, because I have your YouTube channel up right now. How do you deal with monetization? Well, one, do you monetize your channel? And how do you deal with monetization with a lot of the, I mean, there's like some pretty big names here on this channel, like I see like Chainsmokers, 21 Pilots, so remixes like that. Do you monetize them at all, or?
No.
Okay.
No, I don't. I try and upload a lot of original content, but I upload a lot of major label content too, and I work with them to kind of, it's not easy to convince them to give you any monetization on a record, on a artist like Chainsmokers or an artist like Calvin Harris, but maybe one day it'll get there. Another 15 million, yeah.
Any other questions from the audience? Well, we covered it so well that nobody wants to know anything else. I like that. All right, so I think that's going to wrap it up for this Listen, See, Watch, and Hear panel. I want to thank this esteemed group of panelists for being here. We want you to stay in the room. Coming up next, Tommy Nappy is going to moderate the Mobile to the Masses panel. Then we're going to take a break. Cocktail party, 6 o'clock, dinner, 7 o'clock, award show, 8 o'clock, Gypsy Bar, 10:30, premiere at 12:30 with Joe Maz. Got a great lineup of people. Quick picture, let's get this next panel ready up here.